I'm trying to kind of shift a little bit of mindset over from you don't always have to be focused on the numbers. Let's focus a little bit more on the emotions and the psychology behind the numbers because selling is a byproduct, right, of good emotional resonance and good emotional connection. Hello, welcome to another episode of Fail with Fire. I am your podcast host, Phoenix Haw, CEO and co-founder of my favorite first-party data attribution optimization platform, AdBeacon. But today we have a very special guest. She is an awesome force in the space. I actually only just met her for the first time in real life, IRL. But what's funny about this is we have been alongside each other in so many speaking gigs, so many different things, and have yet to actually interact. Sarah Levinger, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's exciting to chat with just anybody in the space, but you in particular, girl, you've been crushing it. So I'm like a little bit of fangirl, a little bit, just like a little bit. I'm like, oh, this is great.
The honor. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, let me give your official intro, and then I'll give my unofficial intro, and we'll dive right in. But I'm now floored. Okay, guys, so for those who don't know Sarah Levinger, shame on you, but she is a Forbes-featured consumer behavior analyst, creative strategist, and performance creative consultant. To date, she's helped hundreds of e-commerce brands increase their paid advertising return on investment using psychology-based creative, and has worked with brands such as Fabletics, Hexclad, Original Grain, and True Plastic. That's honestly, even that, I think you're being very, very humble. If you know anything about Sarah, you're going to see, first of all, on Twitter, she's the one with the little dinosaur emoji.
That was not on purpose. That's literally a byproduct of my children.
Oh, well, thank you, children, because now it's your personal brand. But I will tell you, other than that, which I think is still humble, I have heard Sarah's name in the space over and over again. You don't know this, but when I was just coming into the space, everyone's like, oh my God, have you seen those Sarah Levinger videos or this and that? Have you looked? I was like, who? She's like, oh, she does the ad psychology. And I'm like, what? And
What's it mean? What?
But I'm a huge proponent of everything is psychological. Even just the buying behavior of consumers in this political climate is psychological. And for you to take the approach, I think that the biggest unicorn in the space is somebody that's able to take data and being able to take creative and merge them together, because seldom do those teams speak to each other synergistically. And you do a beautiful job of bringing those two together. And when I heard about you and saw that, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And having to be able to speak at so many events with my name next to yours has been such an honor. And to have you on this podcast is even greater honor. So thank you for coming.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Geez, that's an intro. Yes. I keep telling people that I'm so incredibly lucky because I get to do the weirdest job as a job. If they had to create a job that was like, this is the one that's going to be perfectly suited to Sarah, it was this one. It's just this one. Yeah, because I literally get to just study people all day long. And that's all I ever wanted to do, was just study humans because they're fascinating creatures. Yeah, and there's so much more to learn. So thank you.
No, thank you. And they are fascinating and they're weird. Above all, they are weird.
Yeah.
And my gosh, there's so many ads that I feel like okay. First of all, bandwidth, there's no such thing anymore, because we were just talking offline about how we're both like, oh my God, what's happening? But if we lived in an ideal world, I would love to just sit with you and workshop so many different ideas that we can do together as just case studies for fun. Why not?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Marketing should be fun. And I don't think people make it fun anymore because there's so much pressure, right? To grow, scale, which is incredibly difficult on the brain. So, I think especially for marketers, because we're in this industry where it's important that we scale. Otherwise, we don't have jobs. But it's also a little bit detrimental because it takes out the fun part, and humans actually do a lot better work if they're enjoying what they do. So I'm trying to kind of shift a little bit of mindset over from you don't always have to be focused on the numbers. Let's focus a little bit more on the emotions and the psychology behind the numbers, because selling is a byproduct, right, of good emotional resonance and good emotional connection. Yeah, you can literally sell anything to anyone nowadays. So at the end of the day, it's all about that psychology.
Well, you nailed it. Because if you go back down to the psychology of sales, if we really just took the direct approach, I think in D2C, we constantly try to shorten the path as much as we possibly can, which is justifiable, right? Because the shorter the path, the more money we make, the less, we spread. Fine. But that's just not how life works. The things that last longer are the things that you put more time into. And
Yeah.
and sure, low-hanging fruit, but they don't last longer. So I remember I was supposed to be a recruiter. I would have been a terrible recruiter. But I was in this it was like a 4-series interview. But I remember they were telling me, sell me this car. And I did it horribly. And then they said, no, you have to ask questions. And you have to ask qualifying questions. And it's not even the questions for you to sell. It's the questions of how they can envision themselves in that car.
Yes.
It unlocks so much. So coming back down to ads, I can't wait to dive in with you on this podcast, but I hate to break it to you. It's not about that. It's about failing. Psych.
For the ads, but just kidding. We're not going to talk about ads.
Yeah, we will. I know we will. Then I think it's just by default. We don't know how to not talk about work, but
I know. So true.
But I know that you have so much, like a wealth of knowledge beyond that. So before we get started, there is a tradition we have here at Fail with Fire, which is to do the barbecue test. And
Okay, I'm ready.
so if I was at a barbecue and your partner, your family member, whoever it is, grabbed me and was like, you need to meet Sarah. I need you to meet her, and drags you, what would they say you do for work? And how would they introduce you to me?
I'm going to assume that we're at this barbecue with my husband.
Yes.
Because he obviously knows me the best. One of the first things he'd probably tell you is Sarah is incredibly emotionally aware. Like I'm a sponge. And it's sometimes incredibly damaging to me because depending on whom I'm around, I'll soak up emotion from other people and I can't turn that like empathy muscle off. So oftentimes, if we leave a party where I met somebody who was going through a rough time or experiencing something difficult, I'll leave the party like sad. And my husband's like, what's wrong? It was a great party. And I'm like, well, so-and-so was going through this really hard time. And I just felt so bad for them. And so then, I had to sit there and talk to them. And I was trying to give them back. And so you go through these feelings. I think if you're an empath, somebody who's just very deeply emotionally attuned to other people, it's good and bad. It's been very helpful in my business for sure, because I can understand markets a lot better than most. But it's hard when it's just like living your day to day and you just soak up emotion. That's probably the first thing he would say. Sarah's very emotionally aware. Second thing I know he would say is Sarah's pretty intelligent. I took me a long time to embrace that side of myself because I think as women in the space, sometimes it's not as keen for women to compliment themselves, right? Or actually lean into our strengths. And that's one thing I'm trying to do better about. They're pretty intelligent. I feel pretty good about myself. Sometimes I'm like, I'm kind of smart.
I mean, I can back that. They're
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
10.
I find it so interesting that you said that. Like, as women in the space, we have a hard time complimenting ourselves because often we're considered vain if we were to do that. But it's the same thing with any human. I'm very grateful. I don't know why. Maybe this is like some encouragement to you, but my mom was very interesting when I was growing up. I remember this girl came up to me. We were in ballet. I'll never forget this. And she's like, you're really skinny. And I was like, thank you. I thought that it was a compliment. I was like, thank you. My legs are skinny. And my mom straight up went to this girl and said, apologize. And I was like, oh. And she's like, don't tell my daughter that her legs are skinny. I know what you're saying.
Whoa.
And it taught me, oh yeah, my mom is just fierce one, especially when it comes to me. But she told me, she goes, you are beautiful. You don't need to tell everyone you're beautiful. You are smart. You don't know how to tell everybody that you're smart. But if somebody is complimenting you or pretending to compliment you, but it's a backhanded compliment, you will feel it. Just like the empaths, you start to feel like the what is the core as to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I've always believed that, you walk with confidence because you know you're all these things. I had a hard time accepting compliments for a while. But it's really funny because now I'm in a different headspace where somebody will be like, you're really smart. I'm like, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So anyway,
I am.
I don't know.
Shocker. I knew that was a thing. Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I find it's pretty prevalent with women in particular, but it also happens with men a lot in this space too. Particularly the ones I think that are a little bit more emotionally focused and just more emotionally aware, because you become sensitive to those things. It's interesting in your particular story, you didn't take it as like a slight towards you. You actually took it as a compliment. And it was your mom that took it as an offense. I see this happen all the time, that we tend to grab onto other people's opinions, right? So oftentimes, especially in marriage, I will gravitate towards whatever my husband feels about things. Even if it's not what I feel about it, I'm like, well, what do you think? And how do you feel about this? And it's totally normal for social behavior for humans. But marketers do it too. We tend to look at other people in the space and think, well, so-and-so, who's like a big name in the space, doesn't think this is a good idea, so maybe it's not. And I try really hard to push people to say, you got to prove it for yourself. Like whatever you feel about yourself personally or in business, some of these things have to be vetted before you start to just believe them.
I love that you said that, because there are no absolutes in this game.
No.
There are no absolutes in this game. And first of all, before I even dive into that, I love that your husband really pumps you up and sees you for you and is able to say, like, if he were to introduce me, I would be like, so just like, yes. I mean, you're great. I want to get to know Sarah. Awesome. But I'm so glad Sarah has a partner that gasses her up to this degree, because that's what every partner deserves that. Deserves that their partner sees the best in them and wants to push that and be that introduction, because he's not going to go, well, Sarah does this, she makes this much money and she just came back from here and she's going to this. He went, she's intelligent. She's, like she's super self-aware and like understands, socially aware, emotionally aware. Yeah. We were talking about a lot of things offline before we started recording. And one of them is everyone likes to pretend that they're winning. Everyone likes to pretend that they're scaling. And it makes people feel like shit.
Yeah.
Because if they're not winning and not scaling, they feel like they're behind.
Yes. I've had quite a few friends that have experienced this, that they don't feel like they can break into the market or become their own kind of voice in the market. Mostly just because everybody else is talking already. And that I find really interesting, because I nobody even knew who I was 4 years ago. I was a generalist. Like I came from just like general marketing. And I fell into paid advertising in 2020. So I really haven't been doing this nearly as long as some of the bigger players. But I feel like I have something unique to offer, mostly because it's just interesting to me. So I try really hard to encourage my friends who are feeling that like pressure of everybody's doing so well. Like, how am I going to keep up with the Joneses? They're all doing like millions and millions of dollars every year. And my answer is almost always, they weren't doing that 10 years ago. Like, you're just seeing them at the peak. Like, you didn't see them when they were nobody, So
Also, like, don't idolize anybody. Like, I'm a big believer in today, you're living in a mansion, tomorrow you're living in a paper box. But like, do you like who you are, what you see in the mirror?
yeah.
Maybe that's a very female answer. It's like we're a little more sensitive, but I feel like it's important. And, back down to cutting through the noise, I think this is the only reason why I have any recognition in the space. Like you were saying, no one knew about you 5 years ago. No one knew about me 2 years ago. So here's a perfect example of that. And we'll go into the failures. But, I was recently on a webinar, and this person that was on the webinar was like, kind of threw out this really extreme strategy, really extreme. And my natural reaction is to love that, because I love extreme things. I love just like out of the box ideas, but I have a hard time. And I know that there's a responsibility with it now, because people are listening and people are looking up to you going, I'm going to do that exact thing.
Yeah.
And I also like, when people put you down, like you're saying on Twitter, they're like, oh, I really like this, or cost caps. Cost caps are the only way. And I know, no, ASC is the only way. And they're like, well, man. And I'm over here going like, you're all wrong. And it's fun. But this guy said this. Right. This guy says this, and the argument was, and this is nothing wrong. I'll actually shout out who it is. It's John Coyle. He's at Drupal Whale right now. And I really love this interaction. He was like, you should start to spend all of your money. He's like, if I could, I would spend all my money during Black Friday, Cyber Monday for the month. I wouldn't do any pre-sale, anything. I wouldn't do anything leading up. And I told him I wouldn't do that. I'd do the exact opposite. I would spend my money leading up. And the psychology in my mind behind it is, how many times are you going to discover a new brand or a new product during peak? Very seldom. And if you do, the inventory is very low, right? So the number one goal isn't sales. The number one goal is to take up space in someone's mind, like dating, where they don't think of anything else. So that was like the extremism where I always think, put the proof behind the pudding. And I challenged him. I was like, all right, then let's find 2 clients and let's do this and see who wins. And like, that's
so funny. What was his answer? Was he like, no, yes?
yes, I will. Like, no, it's a little extreme. We could do it. He was a good sport about it, you know. By nature, we're competitors too. And I'm just a competitive spirit. But like, yeah, I think that it's really interesting how we all come up with absolutes, because the types of people we are in this industry are extreme. We're obsessive, we're extreme. However, there's got to be a human side to it. And I think you bring that beautiful human side to it. So I'm very grateful for your energy in this space. And you're also with a tough chick. Like, no one's going to run you over. There's none of that, right?
Gosh, I mean, they were the first couple years. It takes a while to get to know your own value, right? And to get to know your own worth. The opposite side, like the ugly side of getting to know your value, though, is you become extremely isolated, right? You become a little less connected than you were before, because the majority of people are operating on very deep, like ingrained social behavior where there's a lot of give and take. As soon as you start to kind of pull yourself up out of that just a tiny bit, where you start to understand, I can provide something that not a lot of people can provide, like perspective, insight, right? Then you start to run the risk of like, who do you align with, right? Like, who are you actually going to participate with in the space? And sometimes it's a little bit difficult because, as you said, I'm odd. And I have like a lot of emotional weirdness that I get really deep into. I don't have a lot of competitors in the space. I don't know anybody that's doing psychology-based advertising. So it's just interesting to watch your interaction with John, because I know John, fantastic guy, funny, just like really deep-seated, like really ingrained in his ways, which is great, fantastic. But we need people like you and like I to push a little bit, because I think we all stand in the same room and we're all kind of playing a game of telephone with each other, and everybody's telling the person next to them the same thing that they heard last week. And I think it's time that we push a little bit out of that. So,
oh, I like the word. The word, cute. The word of this episode is push. Also, I never said you were one. Okay, never said. I said you pudding. I'm a board. There is the dust. Okay. But that being said, I love this conversation because you're so like, you got it. We're on the same wavelength there. But how do we through this? Because the Sarah Levinger today, in your success, in everything, in order for you to be where you are and where you will be, you have to have a lot of failures along the way. Yeah. A lot of moments where you take a step back and you're like, holy shit. So is there something that like changed your DNA? Is there a failure to fire moment? Because the fire is the catalyst to change. That the fire that brings you out of the failure is actually what matters. And that's what this podcast is about. If personal, if career-wise, if financial, whatever it may be, please walk us through that, because I think people need to hear it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I have so many failures I could probably touch on. One of the biggest one that comes to mind, just transparency wise, actually has to do with my husband, which is kind of funny. Lovely soul. Like, just, I love him to death. He's fan-freaking-tastic human. Very different from me, very mechanically minded and focused, like logical type guy who married just like an emotional mess. So at the beginning part of our marriage, I didn't mean to become a freelancer. I didn't mean to go into marketing. I was actually going to school to be an equine scientist. I was like really into horse. I was a horse girl for like a hot second there. And then
I just am grateful you're not a horse for us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, I'm sure you're great at it, but like, we needed you in this space. Okay. So
no offense to horse girls. Like, horses are fantastic. I still just enjoy kind of the industry over there. It's fascinating. The culture is really interesting, but I got into horses, figured out real quickly I don't like blood. So I couldn't do anything with like vet tech or any like vet school. Just had to pivot really fast. So I ended up in marketing just out of necessity. Like, I needed the money. So I got an internship like right in my sophomore year of college that was for graphic design and marketing. And it just kind of like followed from there. It just suited me really well. It fit me really well. And then they were going to cut my position when I was about 21, second year in. And they were like, hey, we're not going to have this internship anymore. So we need you to go create a business. And then we'll just hire you as a contractor. And you could just come back and work for us. And I was like, I'm 21. How do you create a business? Like what? So this happens to be a lot in life where I just serendipitously fall into things that suit me really well, that fit Sarah's personality pretty well. So I spent the next 10 years freelancing. But the interesting part was because I married somebody who was very logical, very mechanically minded and focused in that direction, we butted heads a lot on like how to set up a good lifestyle. And that I think is not talked about in the industry a lot. Our personal relationships affect our career like trajectories heavily because we're entrepreneurs. And this was like,
well, that's so true. It's so true.
It's so ingrained. Like we don't talk about it enough. This is somebody, just a segue, tangent. Somebody asked me the other day what made a good creative strategist, and I said somebody who had childhood trauma. Anybody that were really deep. Yeah.
They were like, found management. Sarah, I'm like, sorry. I'm in that category.
Making it heavy all of a sudden. Yeah, a good creative strategist has nothing to do with media buying or like creative. It has everything to do with if you had a highly volatile emotional parent in the household when you were a child, you learn to spot patterns better than anybody else in the business. So I know you can't ask that on like an interview. Did you have childhood trauma? But these are the people that notice emotions better than most because they are the ones that were trained over the course of their childhood to watch their volatilely emotional parent very, very closely. And again, there's nothing wrong with having trauma in your life. Everybody does. Everyone has it. And again, it's no dig to like the parents who were a part of that trauma. It just is. Like humans are going to affect humans in the strangest ways. And I think about it all the time because I have kids now too. I'm like, how am I messing them up? But this wraps back around into like what my husband was doing because both of us had very interesting childhoods, right? And so I took one route, which is to watch very, very closely. He took the other route, which is like, we're going to follow the system, right? So I was very creative and very much like, I'm going to chart my own path and I'm going to do my own thing. And no one's going to tell me what to do. Sarah, I'm sure people have heard Sarah say that before. No one's going to tell me what to do. Like, I want to do it the way I want to do it. My husband, very different. He's like, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to work my hardest and I'm going to do my best and I'm going to climb up this ladder. And so we went kind of in opposite directions for quite a long time, for 10 straight years. He went long form pension route. I went entrepreneur, like chart my own course type of route. And it worked well-ish. But the problem, I think, and this is where like the failure part comes in for Sarah, the problem was that because of that personal relationship and the value systems that we had that were drastically different from each other, it started to become a pain point. Because I wanted to work 50 to 60 hour work weeks, right? On top of like having kids, which was intense. And he really was like, it's 5 o'clock. You should be done. Like, you don't need to work anymore. And I was like, no, there's more to be done. Like, I'm growing, I'm scaling. I have stuff I want to do. I'm building, right? I'm in build mode. So because of like our differences in values, it's started to become this weird thing in our marriage where he would suggest constantly, you should quit. You should quit. You should quit. And I was like, but this is like a part of me. Like, this is the only thing Sarah wants to do is grow a business. And so we went fine for about 10 years until we started having kids. And then once we had 2 kids in the mix, it was like, now this is a problem because Sarah's trying to mom full time. And for anybody who doesn't have kids, that's like a 60 hours to 80 hour a week job, especially when they're little babies. So I was trying to mom and I was trying to work at the same time. So I was on calls with a baby, like trying to get the toddler to like stop wiping poop everywhere. And I was like trying to, oh my God, it was just chaos. And, my husband would get off of work at 5 and then I'd be like, you got to take these because I got to go I have to get on a call with Australia tonight at 6 p.m. Like, I got stuff I got to do. So again, it just became an issue between the two of us because he wanted me to prioritize family and home, which I wanted to. But I also had this other piece of myself that was very entrepreneurship focused where I was like, I can't give this up. Like, this is such a core piece of me that if I give up my business, I don't know who I will be. So and I hear these stories a lot from people in the industry where we're not bringing this up a ton, where our exterior relationships are having a massive impact on how fast we grow, where we grow. and like what we build as entrepreneurs. And it's so key to how we feel about what we're doing. So yeah, that was an intense period of time.
You're so right, though, because I'm so grateful you brought that up, because there's this concept biblically of like being equally yoked. If people aren't familiar with that, it's to see like you're supposed to marry somebody who's at the quote unquote same level as you in understanding to be able to move forward. Um, my husband and I are very different too. So my husband's a winemaker. Yeah. He was like a baseball coach for a while, and he actually, so it's an interesting dynamic. I'm glad you brought this up, because he's the reason why I got my master's. I dived into the paid media world, and it was COVID all at the same time. And he was the one that fed me, made sure I was in a good headspace. Stability, right. And like, we've never had a normal relationship. There was always something going on. And then he said something to me that like rocked my world. And it hurt me. And I'm sure you guys had similar conversations in a different aspect, but he's like, when I met you, you were working at a brewery and I was at a baseball facility. And that was his way of going, like, things have really changed. Like for you, you're on these calls. I was going to Dubai. I was going to all these, I could not stop. My last 2 years have been insane. And
Because you love it.
because we love it.
Yes.
And you don't want someone to tell you to stop loving or stop doing what you love because of this normal, right. Because of this cookie cutter or this like systematic way of life that we've been taught to go about. And we're always supposed to strive for more. But then as women, we're supposed to take care of the children and do all those things, which is all beautiful. I want to do all those things. However, I do get scared. Now that we're married, I'm like, I want kids, but what is that dynamic going to look like? And, you're right. People don't talk about this enough. And also on the men's side, who you marry as your partner, it's not so much they have to align with you. You should be able to have that communication open. Like, to me, right. Because clearly you two are still married. You work through things. My husband and I went through that phase it was one of our biggest arguments was having children and traveling and me speaking at events. And he's like, that's just not going to work. Because he was traditional, right? His father was at home.
Yeah.
He's like, it's just not going to work. And I'm like, I'm going to strap the baby to my back. My baby's going to be on my back on the stage. He's like, that's not realistic. And I'm like, watch me.
Well, and it goes to, we're going to get into like relationship talk. Yeah. And I can just already, but it goes down a little bit into traditionalism, understanding like how the country is formulated, what expectations are placed on women. But it also, I think, bears noting, and this is every relationship everywhere, I think we are way too, we go into absolutes a lot as humanity, like as humans, especially in the marketing space. But absolutes are something I hear everywhere, right? Your partner is supportive, or he's like super, super invested in your business. Like he should be someone who's going to support you. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, humans are cyclical, right? So there'll be a good 6 to 8 months where Casey's just not happy. My husband Casey's just not happy with how my schedule is affecting his. And that's just going to happen. Same with like, hey, you know what? Some years you're not going to grow as a brand. You're just not. And it's unrealistic to expect that you would, because that's not how growth works, both personally and in business. So from a relationship standpoint, I resonate with that hard, because we had those difficult conversations of like, you've been on the road for 3 weeks straight. You've been to New York City. You've been to San Diego. You're now going to Miami. Like, what am I supposed to do while you're gone? Right. And it's tough because I'm like, well, you're supposed to just support me. Isn't that like what a marriage is? Because I support you, you support me. But there's opposite spectrums to everybody's feelings, and this is a partnership. So if you're listening to this and like you don't have a solid partner on board yet, or like, you have boyfriends or girlfriends, or you're moving trajectory towards marriage, one of the conversations that was most beneficial to Casey and I was value systems. Like, what do you value as a person? Now, Casey values connection a lot, but he's also one of those people where he needs physical, right? Like he wants me to be in the house. We don't have to be talking or even hanging out. He just wants to know that I'm somewhere in the house. That's pretty important to him as a person. And I'm one of those people that I'm like, I need verbal validation. Like, please tell me that I'm doing a good job, because I just need it. Like, I don't know. I can't gauge where I'm at if you don't tell me like, yes, you're doing great. Keep going. Like I need kind of a cheerleader in that sense. So we had a conversation, probably last year sometime, right when I was like going through some serious panic attack, like anxiety stuff, where he was like, we're gonna have to figure out a way where this works for both of us, right? Because it's got to be balanced. Some days it's going to be weighted towards me, some days it's weighted towards him. But as long as the balance stays there over long-term period, I think that's the best way to do it. So that way somebody doesn't feel forgotten.
I love that. Like, you're right. And I love that this podcast is like amongst a full spectrum of things because DC aside, most people are married or in relationships.
Yeah.
And they're going through this and we are not talking about it. And I will put a little bit more flavor to this conversation as women. And I don't like talking about the gender dis experience because I don't want to be the beacon of that. I don't want to be this, but I think naturally we are going to be because you named already the main women in the space, which is going to be Dara Denny, yourself, and there's a few others in the space as well. But the fact that you can name them all is a problem.
A lot.
And what comes with it too is you're traveling for 3 weeks straight. I was traveling. And aside from being away, it's this idea that your person is gone and they're also around a bunch of men.
Yeah.
You know, it sucks. And it wasn't until Ryan's not a jealous or possessive person by any means, but he came to one of my events and he was like, okay, I get it now. And
Yeah.
it actually made me appreciate him more because I watched the way he interacted. So as a female, if you're in the space and you're trying to break through and you try to find a partner, like bring them because it will be very telling, in my opinion.
Like a smart advice. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't want to be in and then you're like, oh.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting because, as you said, in this space, there's really not like a whole lot of us here, like Alexa, yourself, me, Dara. Like there's some, like there's such a small amount of us who are actually providing a voice, right, in the space. And again, that's no dig to any of the women out there. Like if you want to share what you feel, you should. But if you just want to do the work and you're not interested in becoming like a thought leader, I don't know what you call them in the space,
Whatever.
visual participants, then don't, like you got to decide what's best for you. Yeah, from a relationship standpoint, it actually gets harder the more visibility you get in the space. So, and this is something I heard Nick Shackelford say, I don't know, a couple of years ago maybe. He's talking specifically about the fact that it gets lonely at the top. He's like, the higher I went and the faster I grew and like the more personal growth I had, the harder it was to keep people around because some people just aren't ready to grow at the pace that you're growing at. And that I think is in friendships and in marriage. And that's something I've learned over time is the expectation of, I think my partner should just support me in this because I'm growing something that's going to be cool and has great potential. They may not be ready to grow at that pace, and that's okay. It has to be okay.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Like the more visible so it's so interesting. I came in to the space. I'm using myself as an example because I think it's like us going through it together. I think we have a lot of parallels. But, my husband went from being he's still my biggest fan, but he went to like rooting me on to kind of like, whoa, 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 let's get the brake. Because it's so fast, right? And it's such a beautiful thing because I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I think it's also hard because he'll be like, well, you're gone a lot. Like we just got a dog. So like another dog. And he's like, you're gone a lot. I'm like, I know. And when I was gone, I don't like to. So my thing is, you were saying Casey needs you to be physically in the home.
Yeah.
Ryan needs me to eat dinner with him.
Oh, they always have like their little thing that they just need. It's interesting.
What the fuck?
It's dinner, Bo.
I'm like, I mean, you should be happy. He's like, no, we need to eat it together. I'm like, why? And I get it.
Something in the value system. Yeah.
It's in the valley. Yeah. And for me, I just need to know you have my back. What I mean by having my back is reliability. And even if I'm wrong, I want you to fight with the person who thinks I'm wrong and tell them I'm right until we get home and be like, you were wrong, right? And like that's what I need. And for me, like we're figuring it out too. Like I'm not even a full year in marriage and we're figuring it out at like this crazy pace, but You're so right. It gets lonely, not in the sense that you would assume. It gets lonely because you start to have these conversations with people that are so vapid and so hollow that you kind of check out and you realize, okay, they just want something from you. I feel like I have a very beautiful ability to walk away from those conversations, and I've really curated the people I like to talk to based off of like alignment. Are you willing to have a deep conversation? If you're not, then you can go talk to homie over there. Like he walk about his numbers too and screenshots
Yeah.
from 3 years ago that he white outed, whatever. But yeah, so tell me, like, how was that a fire that was like a catalyst for change for you? So you guys are going through this. Walk me through that.
Yeah. So we had spent 10 years of Sarah being an entrepreneur and basically just like fronting a crap ton of my time towards my job and my business. And at the time in my 20s, I was changing jobs like basically every 6 to 8 months, which is incredibly stressful on a family. Something I realize now. At the time, I was like, it's fine. Like, it's not that hard. Like, it doesn't really affect you, right? Like, you're over there just like working. I'm over here working. We're doing fine. But in retrospect, in hindsight, it became very apparent in my 30s where Casey was left alone a lot, and that was a value that he had, that he wanted me around, right? He just wanted, which I feel bad now being like, you don't need me around. But he did. So anyway, so we spent the better half of 10 years, basically Sarah making all these different businesses and like drumming up work. And some weeks I'd work 80 hours, some weeks I'd work 20. It was just like so volatile that by the time we had 2 kids on board and I came into paid advertising, specifically in a DTC space, and I started growing this, it kind of all came to a head. So I remember vividly, there was 1 year where I worked for No Commerce for like a hot second. It was like 3 months. And it was a good job, good gig. I love Jeremiah. Shout out Jeremiah. Fantastic, fantastic guy. Difficult, really, really difficult though, just based on time constraints. So I had a lot of stuff that I was managing at home because I still had, at the time, I had like probably an 18-month-old and like a 3-year-old at home that I was still trying to like cart back and forth between the nanny, and I was doing part-time like momming, and then I was trying to work this full-time like 50 to 60 hour a week type of thing. They wanted me to travel a bunch in April. They wanted me to continue my like personal brand. There was just a lot of like miscellaneous communication and expectation setting. So, like I said, No Commerce, fantastic. The issue that I was having was I just didn't have enough bandwidth to like provide what they needed. So as I segued out of that, I started to notice this change in my husband where he just like, he wasn't quite satisfied with my own ability to set boundaries for myself. And that was something we had never really discussed before because I had never set boundaries. I never needed to because it was just me. I was the salesperson and the marketing person and the content person, and I was doing all the work, sending out the invoices, doing my bookkeeping. Like I did everything. And we finally had to have a conversation around December of, that would have been last year, 2023. It's almost been a year now. So we got to November and I had gotten on all these consulting clients and I had just segued out of No Commerce, which was kind of stressful. And then we got to the point where I was still working like these big hour long, just straight down until like 9 p.m. at night, get up at 5 a.m., do it all over again. And so in November, I ended up having like 2 or 3 panic attacks within the span of 2 or 3 weeks. So it was not like one, which again, even one panic attack is not a good sign. Sarah was having like multiple in November. So I told my husband, I was like, I'm so stressed out. Like, I can't keep up with this pace. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go put this business. I feel incredibly trapped. I feel trapped in my own business. And I hate that feeling because I made it. Like, I did this to myself. And I'm having straight up panic attacks.
Like, I am the problem.
I'm
the solution.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And he just kept saying over and over and over, like, you don't set boundaries. You don't tell people no. And I was like, well, I can't tell them no because I'm trying to build a business and I need clients and like this. And I kept giving all these different excuses. This is why, this is why, this is why. So we finally got to the end of November and it's after Thanksgiving. And I vividly remember this. We went out to dinner. I can't even remember. It was like a Wednesday night. Asian restaurant. I'm sitting there just like, I'm so stressed out. I can't live my life. And so he was like, I think it's time for you to quit. Like, I've been telling you to do this for 10 straight years. You need to stop. Like, you can't keep going at this pace and have it not affect our relationship, our family, your health. Like, we got to be done. And so I think that was the first day I just took a breath and was like, you're right. Like, I need to quit. I need to just shut the whole thing off. So I told everybody at the beginning of that December, Sarah's taking a 30-day like dopamine detox. But I didn't tell people that I was not planning on coming back. I was gonna quit and then just like never return.
Just fade out into the distance.
Which was
No one's
probably
gonna
not
remember I
very
exist and not. Like what? Like we're just
don't
gonna
know.
forget.
I think at that point I was like, just anything to stop the chaos. I just need something to go away for a minute, right? Like, and I think everybody gets to that spot where it's like, oh, I could just walk away from this. I could just walk away from it and I could never go back to it. And I would be so much less stressed. So I got into December, turned everything off, told everybody that I'm taking a dopamine detox. And I was like, I'm just going to be done. And people are going to be like, where'd that Sarah girl go? And then it's going to be fine. Nobody's going to remember. They'll be whatever. We get to January. Oh my gosh almighty. And this is the toughest part, I think, about failing a lot and going through 10 straight years of being completely opposed about our jobs and the values that we have and the systems that we're trying to place in our life to make it easier to scale up in our life. My husband, I don't think perspective-wise realized how beneficial my job was to our lifestyle. And I didn't realize that like Sarah's inability to say no is why I can't scale. So taking that month off was like incredibly beneficial to our marriage. And it was incredibly beneficial to like everything we had set in place. Because we came back in January and my husband was very much like, so are you going to like never go back to work? I was like,
He's like, I like
made a-
sushi. I like sushi.
yeah, like, but you could just like, sometimes you could just work like a little bit. So that's exactly what we did. We came back and had a big, long conversation in January where I was like, you're 100% right. I don't know how to set boundaries for myself and never have, based upon childhood trauma where I was appeasing people constantly to try and get the love that I wanted because I had emotionally volatile parents who were just chaotic, right? Like they couldn't help it. They were lower middle income class. They had to work hours on hours just to make sure that we were fed, right? And so I never really learned how to tell people no, because as long as I said yes to whatever they wanted, I would get the love that I needed in my life and the attention in particular. So I translated that trauma to business. And so my entire life for the past like 12 years, Sarah's just been saying yes, no matter what the project is. I would just be like, yeah, absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. And then I get stacked with all this work that I was like, I can't handle this. I literally can't even like, I can't produce this much as one person. And then it affected my marriage and my husband wasn't happy. So it just, I think understanding relationships is kind of important, but understanding like your own inabilities or capacities is much more the game. Because as soon as you can identify those, then you could put things in place to fix things quicker.
Nailed it. I nailed it. No, I am very grateful for you because nobody's talking about this. Nobody, literally nobody. And I'm definitely going through this. And I'm sure so many other men and women are going through this with any capacity of like work. It doesn't have to be D2C. It's so funny in a lot of the things that you're speaking to, you know, first of all, I'd like to say that to be where you are now, all the things that came before it were necessary evils.
Yes, 100%.
But you were in a very fortunate position now to be able to take a look and then start to trim the fat and decide, okay, maybe I don't need to do all these things. I'm still in builder phase and it has been a whirlwind. So like, I think back, I don't know if you're in the same space as I am, but like, I go back to when I was managing so many campaigns. At one point, I was managing 40 accounts at one time because I lost.
No.
Yeah.
Anywhere over 10, I'm like, you cognitively aren't there. There's no way. Like that's.
I'm a fucking freak. I'm freak. Okay. So I was managing I was managing a department and I lost my team twice. This is during COVID. Yeah. So like, imagine me being first time in Dubai. I'm telling everyone I have an all-female team. I'm like killing it. And then I come home and everyone's gone. Everyone's like, I'm quitting. And actually the girl I was going to hire to take my position so I can move away from that ad beacon full time, she's like, I can't do this. I just want to be at a brand. She was done being yelled at. She was done with everything. And, you know, the first thing I said when I went to Dubai the next year was on main stage is like, haha, joke's on me. When I got back,
Everyone quit.
Everyone left. So, you go through hell and back. And mind you, remember, I was getting my master's. I was doing a lot of other things at the time. And I was going through a lot of emotional stuff too. And I was trying to build a relationship with somebody during COVID. It was a lot. And I distinctly remember thinking to myself recently, could I do all the things that I did back then today? It's just a different work, right? It's like you use a lot more of high-level executive strategy brain versus tactical strategy brain on this side.
Yeah.
And you have to balance it to stay relevant, but also to like sharpen the blade that is your mind. I'm thinking about all these things. And then also saying no to events at the same time. And then you still want to be relevant because if you're not at events, people will forget about you, like Disney. To your 30 days, I'm gone. No one's going to remember you. I'm thinking how ridiculous that is. But in reality, I think about the same thing. Like I stopped going to events for the last 6 months. My first event was the Commerce Roundtable event.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. And like literally going to that, Sarah, and all my engagement, my leads tripled. Life.
Yeah. Because it's exclusive. Like if you go to all of them, people kind of get like an expectation. She's going to be at the next one, so I'll just meet her at that one. If I only go to one a year. I mean, Sarah only goes to one, just one. And Zenlin was it this year because I got kids. And I have done the year where I went to like 8 different events and it was really heavy and I was traveling a lot. So yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about saying no. And then this is like a totally a girl thing. Like it's just a woman tendency and like a little bit of a woman wound where we are expected to say yes a lot when we're kids, especially like in our teen years. So we just take it and like blanket it across the entirety of our life. I've had more beneficial opportunities from saying no than I have from saying yes.
You know what? You're so right. Like, again, let's go to psychology. So I am a firm believer that anything in marketing, anything in business is like dating. The psychology of dating.
Yeah.
Especially networking. So I've nailed down my networking, right? Where I go there and I purposely don't talk to everybody. I purposely like kind of do my own thing. I make my time exclusive because I want people to know that I'm exclusive, right? It's this like perceived value. And it's the same thing with dating. If you're like open and with everybody and everyone gets a date, then why are you that special? And then the LTV component is like, you need to keep nurturing that relationship. You need to keep, like, I don't get to say hi to Sarah one year and then never talk to her again. I want to, immerse myself into seeing how she's doing on a level that is personal versus just like professional. Because if you're only going towards professional, anyway, my point is psychologically, it's important to engage. However, and as a female, you actually get an upper hand in this. Women have access to the door a lot easier in this space than men because
there's not a lot of us here.
No. But the caveat to that is fucking exhausting emotionally and mentally. So like you're so smart to say no and to have one event. I think I'm gonna get there again. Remember, you have like 3 years senior to me. I'm gonna catch up to Sarah. But you're so right. And it's so good that your husband is able to communicate with you and go, this isn't working.
Yeah, not working. Yeah.
And you heard him.
Yeah. Especially, I think, at the end of the day, again, the way he wants to live life is very different the way I want to live life, right? So I love going chaos crazy. I want to go to like 12 events a year where I'm just exhausted and I
want one a month. Let's go.
Wonderful. But again, and some people that have like been in this conversation with me for a while about like relationships and understanding how that affects your career. Some people's question has always been like, well, if you guys don't align, like, why are you still together at this point in your life? Which again, there's benefits to relationships outside of just like business success. But at the end of the day, there are things that my husband has taught me that I could not have learned by myself. And this is everybody in the industry when it comes to like networking and friends and like who you align with in the space. There are people that I keep around because they teach me something, not just because they're like beneficial and valuable to me, that they can do something for me. Sometimes I keep them around because they push me in lots.
So also, it's easy to say those things, but are you going to be there when the door closes and you're on the floor exhausted and shaking?
Yeah.
Or you're having a panic attack? Casey's going to be there. And I find it so funny that people are so like solution oriented. That's how we are. So they're like, well, then get them out of your life. I'm like, well, congratulations. Now you're going to live a very lonely life.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
yes,
I don't want to do it alone.
but also this expectation of perfection in your partner is a joke, but to find the right partner is also no joke. And I'm just grateful that you brought that up. Kudos to you, Casey. And yeah, you too, Sarah, I guess. Well, yeah, I needed this conversation personally, so thank you. I was really good.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I feel like there's always more to learn, especially as humans. And the only way that we're able to learn them, and especially learn about the triggers and the traumas that really come out of ourselves, is get close to other people.
Absolutely. Even though I hate people, I think you're absolutely
Get close to people that you like,
wait.
that you hate, and like,
Yeah. So this is kind of the round out portion of the podcast, which has been so great. But what is your hot take right now? Like, what is going on in space, maybe, or in your life? What is a hot take?
man,
Be brutal. I'm here for it.
I have so many. Mine. Try to decide how polarizing I want to be. My hot take is probably right now, my biggest hot take is the biggest people in the industry are driving the conversation because they're the ones that have the largest amount of voice. But most of the people in the industry are running a very specific type of brand at a very specific revenue level, meaning most of the advice that you see is not going to apply to you. So 90% of the brands in this room, probably if they do this podcast, you should follow Andrew Ferris. You should follow Cody from Jones Road. You should follow Ash from Obvi. Like, you should follow all these big players. Please don't try and take what they do and apply it straight to your brand every time, because these guys have big budgets, big voices, and they got there by starting small. So
they have fuck you money. I call it fuck you money. Yeah. So
like, I love those guys. They're all fantastic, like wonderful players in the space. But your advice sometimes comes across as absolutist, like we talked about before. Very definitive.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
Listen to.
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, what's also funny too is, so my hot take is that you and I are not the best women in the space.
Oh, I would agree with that.
Self-deprecation. You and I are not the best women in the space. I think I said this to Shaq. I said this to a couple different people. I said, look, I know for a fact I'm not the best female media buyer. I know for a fact that I'm not the best at anything, but I know that I'm a great, effective communicator, and you are as well. And if that means that we have to be here now to open up the door for the women to surpass us that are so freaking badass, I'm down for it. Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
You know, just because you're able, and here's a perfect case study of it, and we'll round out because I love your hot take. You know, people should bump up against what people are saying all the time. Not in a mean way, not in a rude way, but you just ask yourself. Like, I got in a lot of trouble last year with Triple Whale. I get in trouble with everybody, but there was this thing
where
where...
know you're doing it right.
And yeah, like, whatever. I mean, Triple Whale had the whaleys back in the day. And this, again, not a knock on Triple Whale, so don't come at me. I don't care. But they had the whaleys, and they were live streaming it. They did it in conjunction with Twitter. They had like a collaboration with Twitter, and then everyone was tweeting out, "Oh my God, 1.1 million views, like live." And I wrote, I think I said, I was like, wow, 1.1 million people like attribution. That's insane. Because I'm
in that tweet. I was like, Phoenix, get it hard. Just do it up.
Do it. But that's my point, is like, people in the space, like, don't be afraid to push up against, because that's the funny shit. And but if you're gonna talk your shit, back your shit. That's number one.
Yeah, it's very
right.
True. Very true. Yeah.
But that's why I believe, like, you're such a great pillar in this space, because, like I was saying, like, while you do have so much emotional awareness around you, you're also not a weak person. I've noticed that. And you're really up here. Oh, 100%. But that's what I always say to the women in the space that come up to me. So maybe it's a very touchy subject, but like, a lot of women will come up to me and be like,
So like, I really want to come up here, but I just feel really shy. Like when I come into, and I'm like, this isn't the world for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
It,
rude.
it, it also might be, this is not the world for you yet, right? Because 10 years
Mhm.
ago, it was not the world for me. Like Sarah was shy as hell. I didn't have a personal like brand of any sort. I didn't want the attention. It was too much. It was just too much for me emotionally and mentally. And then I got to a point in COVID where I was like, I just need to talk to somebody. I'm going to die. I have a newborn 2-year-old at home. I'm going to lose my mind. Yes. And then again, after a while, you just start to manage it. And I have noticed that there's some people in this space that can come up and start to gain a little bit of notoriety. And it does odd things to them based on childhood traumas that they're trying to process. Some of them get really, really invested about what other people think about them. And then other people in the space, you and I are like, we got trauma, but like we're here also here to do the work. Like I just like the work. Like just here because I enjoy what I do. And and sometimes I think that rubs people the wrong way. Because Sarah's literally just here to have fun. Like, I feel bad, but like, the money is just like an extra ancillary thing for me because I'm blessed and I have a husband who's a pension guy. You know, at the same time, I have the opportunity to retire him in a few years, right? If I continued on the trajectory that I'm on, I have a good chance of making a different life for us. So there's benefits on both sides. Anyways, we wrap that back into understand like everybody in the space they're all fighting their own demons. Everybody over here is fighting their own stuff and their own shit. And the best thing that you can do is be highly empathetic towards what anybody's going through because everything lies unseen. Like 95% of it lies unseen.
Yes, and I'm just getting paint the wazoo. I apologize.
I mean,
You are 100% correct. And these are really important conversations. And I loved, see, this is why Sarah's a badass, because she goes, maybe it's not right now. Maybe it's down the road. Like, I'm a little harder and harsher where like, it's not. But you're right.
Totally possible.
You can change the behavior, just seldom do people actually do it. And
Yeah.
very true. I'm just grateful for this conversation. It is really what I'm getting at. As we round this out, which the hot take was awesome, where can people find you, Sarah? Where can people hang out with you? Where can they understand what you do? What's the best places to find you?
Yes, I'm basically everywhere that you can consume content at Sarah Levinger. Yeah.
Lovely.
Better about making more content. I'm building a ton of really interesting new things over at Tether. That's my new brand. I haven't really told a whole lot of people about it yet, but have me here first. Tether. Tether Consumer Insights. So I'm generating basically a D2C consumer insights firm that we don't produce ads. We just become an informant. Our job is to give you insights into the consumers and into human behavior in particular so that you can scale with psychology. So go over to tetherinsights.io if you want to check that out.
Tether Insights. Tetherinsight.io. It's going to butcher it. I'm so game. I want to check it out. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a wild ride.
Guys. Well, until our next episode, check out tether.io. Check out Sarah Levinger on our socials. We're going to definitely have that in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe because we can do more of this. And we're really grateful for all the listeners. But that being said, have a great week. And until our next episode, bye.